Hello. I'm Dr. Grady McMurtry with Creation and Worldview Ministries located in Orlando, Florida. I used to be an evolutionist, but now I'm a creationist, and I was a trained evolutionist from birth, really. But I became a Christian at the age of 27. I became a creationist at the age of 28. It's been a very interesting journey, but for the last 34 years, I've been traveling the world on 5 continents, working in 20 languages as a teaching missionary, talking about the truths of creation versus evolution. And so what I want to share with you concerns the age of the earth, the age of the universe. The various theories of evolution declare that the earth and the universe are billions of years old. Evolutionists say that we are just the result of a cosmic accident, that we are just thinking animals without specific design or purpose. In school, most of us were taught that life began by random chance chemical reactions. Yet when we see the beauty of the earth, we see the complexity of the living organisms that occupy it. Can we really believe that this is all just an accident? Throughout the world, we are presented with the evidence that calls into question evolutionary beliefs and the assumption of an old age for the earth and the universe. Over the course of this program, we will present to you evidence that will shake the foundations of the evolutionary worldview. Evolutionists say that the earth is, in fact, millions and billions of years old. First of all, you have to understand that they have no proof for this whatsoever. They simply claim it. And you have to realize that evolutionists live and die by 8 words. Those 8 words are so important that you should memorize them. So I want you to try memorizing these words. Please repeat after me. Give me enough time. Give me enough time. And anything can happen. And anything can happen. Those are the 8 words by which evolutionists live and die. We might call it the evolutionary mantra. You see, in spite of anything and everything you can show an evolutionist that evolution is not true, they will simply respond by saying, give me enough time and anything can happen. So the question must be, has there ever been enough time? Now, I was once asked to write an article for a publication. When you're asked to write articles for publications, sometimes they give you the title of the article and say, we want you to write it. Sometimes they say, pick your own title and write the article. And I was given the title. The title was to be, how do you date a rock? And my first response was, first you have to ask her. Well, some of you got it anyway. So, let's think about this. Is there anything about a rock that will tell you how old it is? Is there anything about the size, feel, shape, smell, taste, weight, mass, specific gravity, density, chemical composition? Is there anything about a rock that will tell you how old it is? And of course the answer is no. There's absolutely nothing about a rock that will tell you how old it is. As a matter of fact, I can go outside right now, pick up any rock I choose to. I can claim any age I want to for it. You may disagree with me, but you cannot prove me scientifically incorrect. You understand? I can go outside right now, pick any rock I want to, claim any age I want to for it. You may disagree with me, but you cannot scientifically prove that I'm wrong. Think with me. When you go outside and pick up rocks, do they come with little white strings attached, little white tags saying, I'm 10 million years old and signed by a scientist who was there at the time? Excuse me? No. So let's think about this. Is there any way in which you can date a rock? The answer is no. There's no way that you can date a rock. And so what we want to talk about is, are the earth and the universe really billions of years old, or are they, in fact, young? Now people will say, well, the earth is old. It all came from a big bang. Supposedly this big bang occurred some perhaps 20 billion supposed years ago. But is the earth and the universe really 20 billion years old, or can you really trust the Bible to tell you the truth that it was created just 6,000 years ago? Now, you say a young earth, young universe, and people will say, but wait, doesn't it have to be old? Because, and they will say things like, doesn't it take millions of years for rocks to form or for diamonds to form? What about stalactites and stalactites to form? What about polar ice caps to form? What about thousands of feet of rock layers to form? Doesn't that take millions and billions of years? Or what about deep canyons to be cut into rock layers? What about dinosaur fossils to form? Doesn't that take millions of years? Or perhaps they say coal. Doesn't it take millions of years for coal to form? Or wood to fossilize? And the big one always is, doesn't it take millions and billions of years for light to reach us from distant stars? I mean, that's the big one that everybody asks. But I say it all has to be young. I say it all has to be young because. Now, I always like to start with something for the ladies. Now, ladies, this is a piece of opal mineral, rock. This is dug by hand from Australia, and that's a nice stone, right? Oh, come on, ladies, that's a nice rock, right? Now, that's a piece of natural opal from Australia. This is a piece of man-made opal from Australia. Under an electron scanning microscope, you can't tell the difference. But this artificial man-made opal was grown in that jar right there. Have I got your attention? You see, this is a natural piece of opal stone mined in Australia by hand. We want to take a look at, does it take millions of years for gemstones like opals and diamonds to form? And what about gold to form? Well, this is a natural piece of opal. This is a man-made piece of opal. It was grown in this jar right here. You can actually see it growing right there in that lens. And it only took 3 months. Have I got your attention? You put the right chemicals in a jar, stick it up on a shelf, and you can grow an opal in 3 months. Now, I want to assure everybody here, if you have opal jewelry, it's real. This gentleman is a Christian, a creation-believing scientist. He only does this as a laboratory experiment, but he's found out how to do it. But he doesn't sell them. He doesn't put them on the market. He doesn't flood the market with these things. But it only takes 3 months to get an opal. Or how about that rock right there? Come on, ladies, that's a nice rock. Oh, come on, that's the Hope Diamond in the Smithsonian. That's a nice rock, right? Yep. But evolution said it takes millions of years to form diamonds. Well, first of all, though, you really know that that's not true, because if you think about it, you know that we've been able to make industrial-grade diamonds for many, many years. It takes a few months. We simply subject carbon to heat, pressure, and so forth. But these are crude diamonds in the sense that they're not gem-quality diamonds. They are diamonds, but they're only used for abrasives and grinding and so forth. But are you aware that in 2003, we found out how to make pure, super hard diamonds in only a matter of minutes? Now, it takes high pressure and high temperatures, but it only takes a matter of minutes to get gem quality pure diamonds. Are you impressed? Well, think with me for a moment. You know how scientists are. If we learn how to do something, well, then the next question for a scientist is, how do you do it faster or cheaper or both, right? So the very next year, we found out how to do it at much lower temperatures, much lower pressures, and it only takes 12 hours. Is this interesting? Oh. Well, but you know how it is with scientists. If you learn how to do something, the next question is, how do you do it cheaper or faster or both, right? Well, in 2006, we found out how to make flawless, pure diamonds, up to 10 carats. It only takes 1 day. Today in the United States, you can go into a jewelry store, you can buy a diamond, you can either pay for a natural diamond or you can get a man-made diamond. They're of equal quality. And the man-made diamond is cheaper. And you now have a choice. And let's think about this. We now know that kimberlites, which are what you find diamonds in, actually come up from deep inside the earth at about 9 miles an hour. It only takes about 12 to 30 hours for this material to come to the surface of the earth. We found that out in 2000. And this is another report, 1999, showing that, again, it only takes about 2 to 8 hours for these materials to come to the surface of the earth. So I guess it really doesn't take millions of years to get a diamond. Is that correct? Have I got your attention? Well, what about gold? I mean, doesn't it take a long time for gold to form in nature? Well, actually, no. The massive Lihur gold deposits in Papua New Guinea could have formed in, quote, as short as 5 hours, unquote, claims geologist Greg Hall. That's January of 2007. Here, in a report that actually goes back to 1985, water sampled from over half a mile down by these geochemists contained, quote, 1,000 times the highest concentration of gold ever recorded in the surface waters of hydrothermal systems, unquote. But this was found at a geothermal power plant in New Zealand back in 1985. Today, we now think that there's approximately 53 pounds of gold being deposited in this gold mine while it's being mined. Well, 53 pounds of gold is no shabby, right? And what about stalactites, stalagmites? I mean, doesn't that take millions and millions of years to form? I mean, think with me for a moment. When you go to places, the caves, and limestone caves that have stalactites, stalagmites, don't they say to you, oh, it takes 10, 20 million years to get a cave like this? Is that right? And the other thing they say is, don't touch that. Right? Come on, they say, don't touch that. It'll take 1,000 years to grow back, right? Well, I'd like to see if it really does take 10, 20 million years to get a limestone cave like this. I'd like to see if you touch it, does it really take 1,000 years to grow back? Now, we're looking at do stalactites and stalagmites form slowly or fast? Now, this is a photograph of some Mayan pottery made in the Americas. We know it was made about 700 AD. But in this photograph, you'll notice right here, this is a stalagmite coming up from on top of the pottery. Is that correct? So let's think. Here's this stalagmite on top of the pottery, so that means it formed in less than 1,300 years. Is that right? So if it only takes 1,300 years for this stalagmite to form, I really don't think it takes 10, 20 million years, do you? Not really. There you go. Or how about this? Now this comes from Australia. This is a man-made tunnel. We might call it a man-made cave. It was dug 160 feet deep into a basaltic or volcanic hill in Australia in 1857. But here you see this beautiful flowstone. Here you see these stalactites coming from the ceiling. Now let's think. This photograph was taken in 1997, so it only took 140 years for these formations to form. So I don't really think it takes 10, 20 million years to get a limestone cave. How about you? Oh, come on, can y'all say not a chance? A little louder. Not a chance. Very good. And evolutionists will tell you, well, the polar ice caps contain perhaps a quarter million years of accumulated ice and snow and so forth. As a matter of fact, they will tell you that you can see the little lines in the polar ice caps and say, you can see 200, 220,000 lines there and so forth. First of all, that's not true. It's actually a lie. I want you to think with me for just a moment. How many of you have opened up a refrigerator freezer door and you've seen two ice cubes flowing together in the middle of the freezer? Is that right? Oh. Now, it is true that you can see these little lines near the surface at the top and even down into the middle, but once you get down in the middle, the pressure of the ice is so great that those lines simply become invisible, and after that it's just, subjective judgment and so forth. And they'll tell you that these little lines in the polar ice caps, those are just like annual rings in a tree. You cut down a tree, you count the rings, and they say, oh, well, you can see 200, 220,000 lines. They're just like tree rings and so forth. So this tells us that the polar ice caps are 220,000, years old. But I don't think so. I mean, when I was an evolutionist, I used to accept that kind of thing, but I don't believe it anymore. Let me show you why. Now this is a Boeing B-17 medium-range bomber from World War II. This is a Lockheed P-38 fighter from World War II. In 1942, two bombers escorted by 6 fighter planes left the United States to go to England as a part of the war effort in World War II. Now these planes cannot fly directly across the Atlantic. They don't have nearly enough fuel. And so what they must do is they have to fly first to Bangor, Maine. From Bangor, Maine, they fly to Newfoundland. From Newfoundland, they fly to Greenland. From Greenland on to Iceland and on down to England. Now, these 8 planes took off from the U.S. in 1942. They got to Greenland, and they fueled up on the west coast of Greenland. They started across the polar ice cap of Greenland, ran right smack into a snowstorm. This was a complete whiteout. They couldn't go forward. They tried to turn around, find the base they came from, couldn't find the base they came from. They decided they were going to have to crash land on top of the polar ice cap. Now the first plane went in with its wheels down, flipped over. Everybody said that's a bad idea. So the other 7 planes came in with the wheels up and just belly landed. Now, after the storm was over, the crews were rescued, but the planes were left there because it was much cheaper, much faster to just build new planes back in 1942. But in 1988, some enterprising American men remembered that those planes were up there, and there's a lot of money in antique aircraft, especially military, and so they decided to go up and get these planes, you know, rehabilitate them and so forth, make some money. And so they took brooms and shovels up there to find these planes. Now you have to understand, these planes are not heavy enough to sink into the ice. Wherever they landed is where they stayed, okay? So they crash landed in 1942. Planes stay exactly where they landed. Well, it had only been 46 years. Anybody want to guess, tell me how many inches, or if you prefer feet, of ice and snow they found on top? Anybody? I mean, it's only been 46 years. How much ice and snow do you think they found? 20 feet. Thank you. I have an opening bid of 20. Do I have another bid? 10. Okay, we have a bid of 10 feet, 20 feet. I'll take one more bid. 50 feet. Oh, my goodness. Well, I have to stop the bidding because all of you are just a little low. You see, what we actually found was 250. In 46 years, 250 feet of ice and snow had formed on top of the plains. This is a picture of Glacier Girl as she looked when found 250 feet below the surface. They had to come back. They couldn't find the planes. They took back the brooms and shovels, came back with sonar and radar that would penetrate the ice, finally found the planes 250 to 270 feet below the surface. They actually had to come back with heavy equipment, bore these big holes all the way down 250 feet. They've actually disassembled her, brought her back up in pieces, reassembled her. She's one of the few flying P-38s in the world today. So let's think. It only took 46 years for 250 feet of ice and snow to pile up on top. That's 5.4 foot per year. Is that correct? I don't think those little lines in the polar ice caps are annual rains. I don't think those are years. I think those little lines are individual storms. That would be much more reasonable, wouldn't it? Oh. Now this is a picture of the Upper Grand Canyon of Arizona. And here you see hundreds and hundreds of layers of rock, right? I mean, it's a beautiful area. Now, evolutionists would tell you that these layers could span millions and millions, even hundreds of millions of years, but I would like you to think about it something for just a second. First of all those layers you see here are sedimentary rock. Now, what is sedimentary rock? Well, it comes from the word sediment, correct? So if I had a glass of water here and I threw dirt and sand into the water, whatever settles to the bottom would be called sediment, correct? So sedimentary rock is water deposited rock. You remember from school there's only three kinds of rock: igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. All these layers of rock you see here are sedimentary rock. What you really see here are just layers of dried out mud. That's everything you see here. These are just layers of dried out mud. And I say it takes just 1 year to cut that canyon. That these are just the wet mud layers laid down by the flood of Noah, that this whole canyon was cut in just 1 year. Now, of course, you could argue with that, but let's just take a look at it. This is a picture of the south wall of the Grand Canyon taken at sunrise from several miles away. This is the Colorado River. Now, when you see these layers, you see hundreds and hundreds of layers here, is that correct? But they're all layers of dried out mud. Now, if you were to believe that all these layers came from individual floods, you would have to believe that about 1,000 floods of roughly equal depth occurred one after the other exactly the same way, covering hundreds of thousands of square miles. Now, does that even seem acceptable? That's a little tough, right? And I would like you to think about something with me for a minute. A good scientist always asks two questions. The first question is, what's there? Meaning, when I make a scientific observation, I have to adequately and accurately describe what is present, what is there. But the second and more important question in science is, what is not there? You often learn more by asking the second question than the first. Now, let's ask ourselves the two most important questions in science concerning the Grand Canyon here. What is there? Well, we have hundreds and hundreds of layers of dried out mud. Now, think with me for a second. If each of those layers was laid down by an individual flood, then there would have to be some time for each layer to be exposed before the next layer was deposited on top, correct? Right, if it's one at a time, one layers, then there's a time of exposure, then a second layer, time of exposure than a third layer, right? Now, if that were true, if each of these layers here that seem flat, although they're not flat, they actually undulate and they twist and turn and meet each other at a 90-degree angle. And if you go to the north side of the canyon and you go up the North Kaibab Trail, there's a place where you can actually see one kind of sedimentary rock completely surrounded by another kind, like a donut, but the donut is surrounded by the kind of dried out mud that's in the middle. Well, if each of these layers is supposed to represent different ages, that each one was laid down, there was a period of time of exposure between the next layer being laid on top, then please tell me, why are there no soil horizons between the rock layers? I mean, if the rock layers have been exposed, we would expect some weathering, we would expect some of the rock to turn into soil, is that correct? But there's no soil horizons between the layers. Why are there no V-shaped erosion marks in the layers? I mean, think with me for a minute. If you have a layer deposited, rain falls, starts to etch a V-shaped erosion mark into the layer, then the next layer comes in, is going to fill that in, it's going to preserve it, is that correct? But there are no V-shaped erosion marks in these layers. There are no animal holes, there are no root holes. That's all missing. So what does that tell you? It tells you that all of those layers of dried out mud occurred in one year by a big flood called the Flood of Noah. And because there's no soil horizons, V-shaped erosion marks, animal holes, or root holes in the layers, it proves they were all deposited at one time.